When I was 18, I decided New York was where I wanted to be to go to college, but I guess you could say I'm a Mass girl.
Yeah, we'll leave it at Mass girl.
We'll leave it at Mass girl.
Okay. So walk me through how you ended up in New Hampshire.
So both of my parents, when they were growing up, their respective families vacationed in New Hampshire. My dad's mom was from Canada. Both my mom's parents were from Canada, so there was like this little conduit of New Hampshire to go up to Canada once in a while. So they visited New Hampshire when they were children. So when they had children, that's where my parents took us. So we started out at Storyland and graduated to Santa's Village. And then when I was 12 years old, we went to Franconia, and we stayed.
Like randomly?
Well, my parents loved the flume and all that good stuff, so we came up to Franconia. Actually, my family, one of my cousins owned the campground that's out in Twin Mountains, so we popped in to see them. But we were in Franconia. I was standing in Echo Lake looking around, 12 years old, and I said, "Daddy, I want to die here." And he looked at me, and I said, "It's the most beautiful place I've ever been." And that never left my heart. I spent 23 years in Florida, which is another story, but always knew I would end up in Franconia. And I did. I moved up here in my 40s, and I will be here until I die. Fulfilling the promise.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you actually, your house is in Franconia, right?
Yes, I live in Franconia. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I call it my little piece of paradise. It's the most beautiful place in the world.
I saw the other day that you had some visitors outside smelling the flowers.
Yes, my critters. I love my critters. It's one of the reasons I love living where I live, because I love wildlife. I love animals. And yes, I've got my bears that roam and come walking through. When I lived there before, because I had left for a short time and gone up to the Gorham area when I worked there, but I just returned. But when I lived there prior, I had a family of bears that I watched grow up, and their cubs became parents, and we shared the property. I mean, I would be in the garden, and they would just meander by. I'd be sitting in the hammock, and Mama would be on the rock on the other side of the brook watching me. And so I have this great relationship with the bear families that have been on the property, and I love them all the animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other animals do you get coming on your property?
I've got Foxy, who comes every night. She stops by every night, and a slew of birds. I've got a porcupine and a groundhog. Prior to this year, I had some cute little weasels around.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, squirrels and chipmunks. They're around.
You ever had any moose show up?
Not when I've been awake to see them. Deer have come through the backyard. Coyotes also. I've seen them run through the back, but I have not seen a moose on my property. But that's okay. I get in my car and just drive around at dusk, not hunting, but animal critter watching.
Yes,
I call it
critter watching. Okay.
Yes, so I've seen them there.
Yeah, awesome. So Lynne, I think probably many people know you because of Theater Up, and that's how I knew you initially. You have a theater background. You're the executive director of the nonprofit, right?
Yes, exactly.
You're not the director of the theater.
So I'm the executive director of Theater Up, and Andrew Ledestria is the artistic director.
Okay.
So the way it works is everything that happens on the stage is under his purview.
Yep.
And everything that happens in the business side is mine.
Okay. So that's happening. And how long have you been with Theater Up now?
In this capacity, 2.5 years.
Okay.
Prior to that, I volunteered with them and stage managed and painted sets and things like that.
So you've been involved for a while, but you do have a background in theater.
I do. That was my original love. When I was in high school, I was in theater and went to college in New York, studied theater, And the summer after my freshman year, stayed in New York and did some summer theater. Was actually in an off-Broadway show at one point. I know, it was fun. I had a grand time. I lived in the city. My dance instructor had to go on tour, so I got to live in an Upper West Side apartment for the summer and enjoy all the things.
What was that like?
City. It was phenomenal. It was so fun. And then, just walking to rehearsals at night and walking down the main drag. It was a blast. Did some singing on the side and in a piano bar, and acted and had a blast. I had a wonderful time, learned a lot. Yeah, so I did start in theater.
So what happened there? Like, did it end for a while?
So I was in this show in the summer, and the director came up to me and said, "You've got it.
You've got it.
You can make it.
Oh.
You're going to go all the way." And I was like so excited and so like honored and flattered, because he was a pretty heavy director in the city at that time, and I just felt so complimented and humbled and excited. And I went home, and over the course of I don't know, the next few weeks, I realized I don't want that life. I'm a super recluse, which anyone who knows me or meets me or talks to me is like, "You're right, you're an introvert." I don't think so. But I am. I'm very much a homebody and a person who wants to huddle up in my little cozy nest. And I watched, all the tabloids and all the press and the people that are, hounded when they're famous. And at 19, I said, I don't want that life. And I quit. I left.
What?
And I loved it. I lived it. I breathed it. I loved it. But that recognition, and I don't know how that came to me at 19 to say, I don't want that life. And so I left theater and I moved to Florida. And I played on the beach and waited tables for a few years and said, what do I want to do with my life? And education was the answer. And so I became an English teacher and eventually principal.
Whoa.
Isn't that wild?
I have more questions. What made you decide on Florida, first of all?
Actually followed a relationship there.
Okay.
So it was like, oh, yes, let's go to Florida.
Yeah, sure.
It's warm. It's February. It's Long Island.
Yeah.
Who wants to be on Long Island in February? Like, no one. We're like, let's go to Florida. And then we got there and we're like, oh, let's stay in Florida.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up there.
And then did you, when was school for teaching?
I was probably there for about 3 years before I decided to go back to school. And and when I walked away from New York, I walked away from almost a full scholarship. I was a pretty good student in high school. So then I had to do it myself once I got to Florida. And I did. Yes. And it took me a while to work and finish school, but I did. I think I was 28 when I finally graduated.
Good for you. I'm curious now what kind of resistance you felt from friends or family when you were 19 and left the industry.
Well, my parents were disappointed because I left a scholarship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't have a plan when I went to Florida. I just wanted to go to Florida. So at that point, I hadn't set any other goals, and so there was this worry. I mean, my parents are wonderful people, but there was always, whether it was from them or internally, a need to achieve and accomplish.
Yeah.
So for me to kind of just be out there, waiting tables and running on the beach.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? So, and I would say friends at the time, some of them were like, you're crazy.
Yep.
The people I was in school with were like, you're crazy, stay here, keep doing this. But I did it. And
you did it.
I just went with it. But that's kind of been the way I've been my whole life.
Yeah.
I just go with it.
Free spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So, when you were in theater, what were the parts of it that, I mean, it sounds like you really like not being center stage, but what were the parts that you absolutely loved about it?
So it's interesting because a lot of actors actually love the center stage thing when they're on stage.
Yeah.
And I was the same way.
Okay.
So in my, personal life, it was very much to myself. But once I stepped on stage, it was like this exciting, freeing, wonderful experience to just let it all go.
Yeah.
And I'm 110% person in whatever I do. So when I got into a character, like I remember I played Curly's wife in Of Mice and Men, the only woman in the show.
Okay.
And she gets killed on stage, and it's a whole dramatic thing. And I was just so full on into the whole performance. And so it's this awesome way to be able to play, but to tell a story, and I love a good story. So I loved the whole storytelling, kind of immersion into the character. And there's a collaboration and a family that you have with whoever you're working with on stage, and you have these crazy bonds. I still am connected to a lot of those people from decades ago.
Yeah.
Because those moments are so emotionally tying and binding.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's like, and that's why a lot of people involved in Theater Up say it's a family, because it really is.
I imagine you're kind of in a more emotionally vulnerable state when you're doing those roles.
Yeah. I think you have to be. I think you have to really, dive into the emotions that the character would be feeling. And it's really tough to not tangle up in the emotions.
Yeah.
You've got to feel it,
Yeah.
for it to be real. You keep it separate, it's not you, but you still have to tap into those emotions.
Yeah.
So, yes, it does come with some vulnerability, and it also comes with some strength.
Absolutely.
You feel a sense of empowerment when you're able to really harness that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I want to ask you how you came back to theater after being a teacher for how many years?
So I was in education for 25 years.
That's a long time.
Very long time, and loved it.
What age did you teach?
Loved it. So I started in middle school, 10 years in middle school, and then went to high school. I taught English for a very long time. And ended up, when I moved up here, that's a fun story, but when I moved up here, went into being a principal at a high school, and then I wrapped my career in education in Gorham as the dean of students for 3 years at a middle high school.
Okay.
So it was like coming full circle in a way, because it was a school that, or it is a school that has both middle and high school in it. And I just love teenagers. I think teenagers are the coolest people on the planet. They are trying to figure it out, and they can get sassy, and they can, and they're pushing the boundaries, and they're fascinating to me, and I love their energy and their passion and all their moods and their attitudes and their sharpness and their sense of like, I want to do this because I think it's right. That's a wonderful quality. So I love teenagers. So yeah, it was a fantastic journey. And then one day I said, next.
Just one day you woke up.
There were, some things that had happened, and I said, this isn't resonating with me anymore. And I am a big believer in follow your gut.
Yeah.
Go with what is resonating with you. Go where you're being called, you know, follow that. And don't be afraid to completely change things. And so I had given my notice, and I was going to start my own business. And because I've studied, numerology, astrology, Reiki, tarot, all of those, Chinese medicine, animal medicine, crystal healing. I've done all of that since I was 21 years old. And I said that, I had people throughout the years saying, why don't you charge for this? Why don't you charge? And no, it's a gift, I share it with people. Yeah. It feels good. But that year I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I had the whole thing set up, website, business cards, the Reiki table, the whole shebang. And then Andrew called me and said, what? You're not at Gorham anymore? We just posted a job for an executive director. You need to apply.
How did Andrew know you?
So Andrew and I met when Drowsy Chaperone was going on, which is a play maybe, 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
They did. And I auditioned for the show. Now, I hadn't been on stage in, my goodness, 25 years or something. I don't know. And friends of mine had said, come audition. And I auditioned, and I got cast, and then I fell, and I tore up my knee. And
how did you fall?
Oh, I do my own stunts. You never know. I could fall going up a stair. I do my own stunts.
Okay.
So, but I tore up my knee, and the part had a lot of dancing in it.
Yeah.
So I pulled out, and I said, I can't do the show. And then he needed a stage manager. So he said, would you stage manage? Now, I had college theater experience. I know what that means. That is a heavy lift. There's a lot involved. You're living at the theater.
Okay.
And it's a good 20-hour-a-week commitment to stage manage. So, I was working full-time, but I was like, sure, I'll stage manage. And that was my introduction to Andrew. And he and I actually, he lived upstairs in the apartment from where I live right now. There's a loft apartment, and he was in transition at one point, leaving one place and going to another. So he moved upstairs for 3 months.
Oh, no kidding.
And then he and I worked together in the Impact program, which is a program that Granite State Independent Living has.
Okay. Working
with at-risk youth in career development and placement. So we've got a little history together of a bunch of different things. So it was funny when he called me and I said, no, I'm about to push go on my business. No. And he said, apply. And of course, I love everyone at Theater Up. I mean, I stayed connected to all those people, and I did, volunteering. They were friends. And I just sat back and did some meditating on it and said, this is my next path.
So I want to ask you about that, because that's a very human moment where you're faced with opportunities and you have to make a choice, and there's not one clear thing this is the right thing to do. Like, both could be right and lead you down different paths. So can you help me understand what your process or approach is to making decisions like that, especially because you were about to launch a business? I mean, that would have completely changed your life.
Yeah, it was very interesting, unexpected, interesting, and quite a blessing.
Yeah,
as I sit here, yes, quite a blessing. I think that when I was going through the process of trying to figure out if it was time to leave education, there's an author, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who writes a lot of great literature, and he has an exercise where you write down on the left side of a paper not what you want, not the practical, tangible things, but how you want to feel.
Yeah.
So how do I want to feel when I go to work?
Yeah.
You know, what are the things that I want when I have that work experience? And you can do it with anything, you know, and I want, you know, shared values with my colleagues, the flexibility to blah, 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 blah. So like the things that you want to experience if you were to have X job. And then on the right-hand side, the values that you hold really, you know, strongly in your life. What are the values and that kind of guide you, drive you, that you hold to? And you focus on that, and, you know, whether you call it meditating or just reading it or just sitting in the energy of it, that was something that I created and looked at daily, hung it up. So the first thing I saw when I woke up in the morning, and read it as if it were true, as if it were happening right now. It's part of what they, you know, manifestation.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
It's part of manifestation as it is right now. And so I did that with this job, with this decision. That was a big thing. And, you know, came to the realization that I was also still in a place in my life where connection and relationship were not only important to me, but were vehicles through which I could do my work and spread joy, spread, you know, all the goodness. And so working for myself, while I would have had clients, would have been a very different energy. Working with this fabulous group of people, there's my connection, there's my relationship. And it's allowed me to have even more than I imagined in that arena because of all of the people that I meet, all of the patrons who walk through the door, all of the volunteers who help us, the community that shows up. It's been incredible. So, you know, that's how I usually decide things, is I look at that value and experience list that I make and figure out where that's going to be most supported and how I'm going to have that experience. So that's how I came to it.
Did you ever have a moment after you made the decision to work with Theater Up where you felt like any doubt or second guessing of the decision you'd made?
Yes, and I think most people do. And it had nothing to do with Theater Up. It had to do with what I chose not to do. Yeah. And so you always go back and go, oh, and then at some point you say, knock it off with the what ifs. Like, you put your foot down on this path. Yeah. And you trust it. So walk it. Walk it with all you've got. And, you know, that thing is still there. I actually have had a client for 2.5 years who lives in Florida that remotely I meet with every 2 weeks. And so it's not that went away. It's just that this is the purpose right now.
Theater Up.
Yeah. This is the purpose and the vehicle, and brings me so much joy.
I love that.
So much work, but so much joy.
Wow, that's incredible. I really appreciate you sharing that because, and I know our listeners, you know, we're all human beings. We're all facing decisions, and sometimes we don't have, most of the time we don't have somebody saying, this is the right way to go. Here's where you need to go. We just have to make the judgment call. And that can be really paralyzing if you don't really know what to think about. Well,
and I think a really big key is to get out of your mind and into your heart.
Oh.
That's the big key, because your mind, your thoughts are going to take you in all kinds of directions, and that's really where the doubt comes. Yeah. Right? And when you listen to your heart, when you follow your heart, that's usually the right way to go.
Yeah. Good advice, Lynn. All right, we're going to take a music break, and we have a playlist that has been Lynn's. It's curated basically by Lynn's preferences, and she's a fan of Bonnie Raitt.
Yes.
So we're going to listen to a playlist. Let me see if I can find a Bonnie Raitt song here. We're going to listen to Angel from Montgomery.
That is my favorite.
Is it?
Bonnie Raitt song.
Yes.
100%.
It was meant to be. All right. You are back listening to WZNC LP Bethlehem. This is Amanda McKeen with North of Normal, and we have Lynne Grigelevich. Yes. Did I say it right this time?
Yes.
Okay. Lynne, I have a question for you. We have been kind of talking about your background, a lot of theater stuff. One of the purposes of this show is to highlight our humanity. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious what kind of crazy stories you have to share with our listeners. And when I ask you what's one of the craziest things that's happened in your life, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind? Well, as we talked about the free spirit thing, and putting your foot forward on that path, I lived in Florida for 23 years. The first 8 years were great, and then I wanted to come back north. But, things happen. You have a job.
Yeah.
You got a relationship. You buy a house, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the last year I was in Florida, 2010-11, I was in bed and I said, I'm going to New Hampshire. That's where my heart has always been. I'm going to New Hampshire. And I found and applied for a job at Ledyard Charter School in Lebanon as the executive director, at-risk high school students. The toughest of the toughest, right? So I applied for this job. They, as all charter schools, had great financial limits. So they interviewed me online and then said that they would love to interview me in person, but they couldn't afford to fly me up. So I said, I'll fly myself up. So my friend and I flew from Florida. She accompanied me.
Okay.
She slept on a bench outside of Dartmouth while I interviewed. And so I was in the final 3, so I flew myself there and interviewed, came back, had a great interview. And I said, I'm going. And I had been trying to sell my house for a while.
So they offered you the position?
Nope.
Oh.
So I did this great interview. And been trying to sell my house for a while, couldn't sell it, opened it up, sold everything in it, had like this giant flea market, put everything I wanted to take with me into 2 pods on my front lawn. And then on June 17th, 2011, I got in my car with my 3 cats and enough clothes for 2 weeks, and I started driving north. And I told the pod people, head towards Lebanon, New Hampshire. Just go. I'll tell you where to go when you get closer. And I got to, you know where south of the border is? Which is between North and South Carolina. That crazy little, oh my goodness, you've got to look up south of the border. It's a crazy, fun little tourist attraction. So I get right to the North South Carolina border, and my phone rings, and it's the president of the board of the charter school, and he says, we'd like to offer you the job. And I said, great, I'm halfway there. He said, what? I said, yes, I'm coming. He goes, okay. My entire family and friends thought I had lost my mind. I walked away from 23 years in Florida, a great career, making finally good money in teaching, owned a home. And I just said, nope, my heart's in New Hampshire. And that's what I did. And I got here, and the first place I went to look for an apartment, I found and loved. So I called the pod people, and I was like, here's the address. And that was my journey back to New Hampshire, where I'd always wanted to be.
Oh, my goodness. That was, initially my thought was, wow, that's incredibly risky. But maybe it wasn't. It seemed like you were really aligned with what was happening.
100%.
Yeah.
And, I did. I had friends that said, how can you do that? How can you leave a job without having another job? How can you leave your home without a place to go? And I said, because it feels right. And I'm going for it.
Oh, my goodness.
They said, well, what if you don't get the job? They said, well, I'll scoop ice cream at Bishop's, if I don't care. I want to be in Franconia.
Yeah.
So that's, and I didn't end up in Franconia right away because I was 3 years in Lebanon. But, so I've been called crazy a lot in my life for that very thing. That's like leaving the job at Gorham. I didn't have a job to go to, but I knew it was time to close the door and another one would open.
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think of the name of the book. It reminds me of this book about a boy named Santiago, and he is searching for treasure. Do you know what book I'm talking about?
I've lost the title, but yes, I do.
Oh, I wish I could remember it right now. But you head in the direction.
Yes.
You don't know where the destination is, and you don't know the details, but you know that you need to head in that direction.
Absolutely.
That is so profound, Lynn.
Yeah.
And I love hearing how things, like being able to reflect back on those moments, because it's not just one. You have this, it's a pattern in your life.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's funny because I know some people would say it's an irresponsible pattern. It's too risky. You're crazy. But I've always just felt like I know when it's time to say, this was wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
But it's done, close the door, and know that the next door will open. I've just always trusted that and gone with that flow, So, and it's exciting. And if you can trust in it, then there's really no anxiety around it, because you know that it's going to just be exactly what it should, and it's going to unfold. And when you stop trying to control everything, and just, I liken it to getting into a kayak and throwing the paddles over and just going, like, where is it going to
let it carry you.
Yeah. And so it's a really freeing feeling.
I just remembered the name of the book. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Yes.
So great.
Oh, such a great book.
Yes. It's seriously my favorite book.
Yeah.
And it is like that. He's on this journey and he doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
Or where he's going. He just knows that he needs to follow the signs.
Yeah.
Well,
especially because if you really think about life and what we've all gone through, it's not really about the destination. It's about what's going on the whole way
that's so
along
true.
there.
Yeah.
Those are all the experiences and the opportunities for growth and expansion. And, that's what it's all about. It's not the end game.
Right.
It's what's happening along the way.
Yeah, what you pick up. Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So glad we're talking right now.
Me too.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I'm glad that we've got people that get to listen in on this conversation, because I think it's so valuable.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I do too.
So, you had mentioned something the other day. I posted a picture on social media of some silk moths that I had taken pictures of. Mm-hmm. And they're so beautiful, and they tend to show up in June for some reason in my life. I don't know what that means right now, but you made a comment that there's some kind of moth medicine.
Yeah.
That I don't know what that means at all, and I would love to learn, and I bet you our listeners would be really intrigued too.
Okay. So I love animals so much, and I laugh sometimes when people say that we're so much more evolved than animals, because I don't agree with that. I can use a knife and a fork, but animals live purely in harmony with nature and the cycles, and they do what they need to do to survive and procreate, and there's no emotion around it. There's no judgment. There's no harshness. There's no hate. There's none of that. They do what they need to do, and they live by instinct. And the Native Americans forever have talked about animal medicine, which is all animals carry with them an energy or a lesson or something that they can teach us. Mm-hmm. And so animals, are symbolic of different things. For example, we'll talk about moth in a second, but snake medicine. If you run across an animal comes across your path, you notice an animal, it's telling you something, it's teaching you something, it's having you kind of open your eyes to something. So snake medicine, for example, is about transmutation, and it's taking something that may seem toxic, poisonous, harmful, and transmuting it into something that is a blessing, positive, healing, helpful, right? Butterfly is transformation, right? All the animals. Coyote is the trickster.
Okay.
So every animal has that medicine. If you really pay attention, then you can study it. So moth medicine is super interesting because moth is similar to butterfly. Yeah. But moth is more associated with the darkness, right? And so while butterfly is about transformation, moth is about metamorphosis. And moth always goes towards the light, right?
Yeah.
You notice that,
yes.
Right? So moths seek the light. And so that's one of the lessons or the medicines that come with moth is, are you a person that seeks the light? The other is that because it's in darkness, the moth metamorphosis is about going through things that are dark to come out on the other side to the light. So it's a different energy than butterfly in that there's an experience of going through things that are darker or heavier or more conflict in order to foster that transformation, right, in a person. Moth also, moth medicine people tend to be able to pick up on energy of other people a lot. They can read energy very well. So that moth medicine is about having almost a psychic ability in that way to really be able to sense energies. And one of the aspects of that is a warning to observe and not absorb.
That's so perfect.
When you have moth around you, it could be any or all of those things, but that's one of the things that moth carries is the lesson to observe and not absorb. So all of that is what some of what moth means. So when you encounter a moth or you say moths are around you, it's there to have you maybe reflect on those things,
Oh my goodness. You just brought so much meaning to moments in my life.
Yeah.
I actually just wrote a blog post last week. And what's today? Tuesday? It's going to be in the paper tomorrow, the Littleton Courier, but it's the story about my second rescue mission ever.
Oh, I read it.
You read it?
Powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful.
There were moths in that story.
Powerful.
Dive bombing my face because I had a headlamp on in the darkness and the rain. And I'm wearing a shirt right now that says "The world needs your light." Can you read the back of it? Because I don't remember what the back says.
A world in darkness needs your light. Look
oh
at
my
that.
goodness.
Hello.
It was meant to be.
Hello. These are not accidental
encounters. Yes. So that is just so cool. I love finding meaning in things that maybe didn't have it before. That's why I write.
Yeah.
And
there's a fantastic book. I mean, you can look. There are a lot of books about animal medicine, but Ted Andrews wrote a book called Animal Speak.
Okay.
And it covers pretty much every animal there is out there.
Nice.
And it's a wonderful book. It's my Bible. It's by my bed.
Is it?
Oh my goodness, yes. It's interesting because I'm a very peaceful person, and it's rare for me ever to get upset about anything. And I had a moment of friction with someone a couple of months ago, and I was sitting outside having coffee, and this wasp landed 2 feet away from me on this planter and stayed there all day. I ran inside, got my Ted Andrews book, and wasp, one of it is about stinging communication.
Oh.
How you have to be careful with your words, that you're not, you have to be direct, but the wasp medicine reminds you not to sting.
Yeah, that's so
And that
cool.
moth, that wasp never left that whole day. And I was like, okay, I get it. I hear you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So what was the name of that book?
Animal Speak
By
Ted Andrews.
Ted Andrews. That sounds really fascinating.
It is a fascinating book.
Didn't you just tell me before this show that you're basically a library and you lend books out?
Yes, I did tell you that. I am I love the library. I have cards at all the libraries. I probably shouldn't because I live in one town, but I secretly have library cards all over the North Country.
Yeah?
And I love libraries, and I love little free libraries. And I almost never keep books. I always pass them on when I read them, except for maybe 8 or 10 books. That's one of them that I keep.
That you keep.
And if I find someone that I think would be a wonderful person to read a certain book that is in my keep collection, I'll just buy them one.
Okay. Noted.
Note to sell.
Yes.
Note to sell.
Awesome. Well, we have a few minutes left. We're going to go to another song, and then we'll come back. Let's see. Let's try Tracy Chapman. Does that work for you?
Some Tracy Chapman.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. All right, we're back. This is WZNC LP Bethlehem, North Country Community Radio, 99.9 FM, streaming live online at nococommunityradio.org. This is Amanda McKeen, and you're listening to North of Normal featuring Lynne Grigelevich. And Lynne, we have a few minutes left. I wanted to ask if there was anything that you wanted our listeners to know specifically about Theater Up. You guys always have stuff going on, so.
Yeah, we do have stuff going on. The summer is not a production time. It's our do all the other things that have to get ready for production. But yeah, we've got a really great season coming up. Some very high quality theater coming this year. And we open with The Crucible in November. So right now, it's time to prepare for auditions, people. Woo! Come on out if you're 16 years of age or older. Auditions are July 23rd and 24th. You can visit our website for details on that, but that will be a powerful show.
Yeah.
To open the fall with. Yeah, it'll be great. So that's what's happening in the current. We're revamping our website.
Nice.
We're also rolling out the Up Academy in the fall. So Andrew Ledestri will be teaching an intensive acting study.
Ooh.
All year. It runs in trimester segments, begins in the middle of September, goes through the end of June. And it's for students 13 to 18 who want to dive headlong into studying acting with Mr. Ledestri, very experienced and talented professional. So that's a great opportunity to that sign-up's on our website as well.
Is that is there a cost to that?
Yes. So it's the trimesters run 9 weeks. It's $375 per trimester.
Okay.
But we do have a scholarship program.
Nice.
For those who would need assistance. In the same way that we keep our ticket prices really low so that it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And we do complimentary tickets for those who need it. We also approach the academy that way. So we want everyone to be able to play and study without that concern.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's exciting. Very exciting.
Part of a big part of acting, I'm assuming, is being able to improvise and roll with whatever's happening.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I had this opportunity a couple years back to do a improv 101 class, and it was one of the most fun things I've ever done. And it was so valuable because it teaches you to say yes and to whatever is going on around you.
Right.
Like just embracing the unknown, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So like even if somebody's not super into acting, the skills translate into real life.
Oh my goodness. And it's coming from education, I can tell you that theater is one of the most powerful vehicles to teach soft skills, social emotional skills, interpersonal skills, all the things that not only contribute to you having a happier, healthier life, but those soft skills that employers look for, so you're successful in the workplace. All that comes through theater study. It's incredible, and it has benefits all around, and it's fun.
Yeah. It is fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. We're going to wrap up for this hour.
Oh, too bad.
I know. Do you want to come back sometime?
I would love to come back. When I come back, though, I would like to go through the wall of LPs and listen to them one by one, because this is quite a collection. What a great studio this is. Oh, my
goodness.
What a fabulous studio this is.
It is fabulous.
I love it. But yes, I'd love to come back another time and keep chatting.
That's awesome. Lynne, you have been such a valuable guest today. The things that you've shared, I hope people listen and take to heart, because there's a lot of truth and a lot of wisdom in your experiences and what you've learned so far. And excited to see where you go from here and see you keep shining at Theater Up.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm grateful. Thank you for the time with you. And you have the shirt on that says "Bring the Light," because that is what you do, Miss Amanda.
Thank you,
bring
Lynne.
the light, and it's a pleasure to know you.
Thank you. All right, guys, enjoy the music. Thanks for listening.